Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Brothers channel. And today I'm going to be doing a versus video between the Nike PG4 and the Nike PG5. So the PG4, I really like this shoe, especially because of the cushioning setup. The PG5, a great performer. They are a little bit different, even though the cushioning setup is pretty much the same, we'll get into all of that. If you guys want to cop either of these shoes, I'll leave a link in the description box. The PG4 is going for super cheap. I've seen some colorways go for like 70 or 80 bucks, but retail price, they're both the same, 110 bucks. So if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I'll leave a link in the description box. But let's get it started off with the Tracciones, and the PG4 traction was not very, okay, so it was good, right? But then it wasn't top tier. Like the PG2 had good traction, PG1 was really good. I mean, after breaking it in, you have to break it in, but the PG1, PG2 were really good. PG3 was top tier, and then the PG4 here was a little inconsistent, right? And I was also playing with the outdoors, and it was way more inconsistent than the PG5. The PG5 was really good. I had no issues with slipping out, no inconsistencies or anything like that. It would just stop on a dime, and it would always stop on a dime no matter which way I would move, laterally, going forward or whatever. The PG4, it wasn't terrible or anything, and it wasn't like the slipping out was very bad, but it would slip out a little bit and just it would slip out, and the PG5 wouldn't. So the PG4 I would say is a little bit worse. And also, just from my experience on an indoor court, it would pick up dust, which kind of sucked because the PG3 would never pick up dust. So yeah, it was kind of a dust magnet, and you had to wipe pretty frequently. The PG5, I don't really have that information, but I did ask you guys, and you guys said the PG5 was really good on the indoor court as well. So I'll take your guys' word for that. So the PG5 is just better than the PG4 for traction. As far as the durability goes though, the PG5 is terrible. Do not play with it outdoors ever at all. Don't even step outside on the concrete with this because it will just explode. No, I'm just kidding, but the durability is terrible on the PG5. The PG4 is also very bad. If you're gonna play outdoors with either of these shoes, I will highly recommend that you don't, because you will run through the outsole very quickly. Alright, moving on to the heel to toe transition. They're both pretty damn smooth. Here in the heel, you have a little bit of a curved shape and a good amount of heel compression. There is a curved shape here in the forefoot as well, and both of these shoes have a lot of forefoot flex. So super smooth when you're running down the court. They are a little bit flatter than I would like, so they slap just a little bit, but that's okay. That's just me being nitpicky at that point. They're both pretty damn smooth for heel to toe transition. All right, moving on to the cushioning setup. So they're both using the same exact air strobel unit, right? When we saw the dismantling, that's what I thought at first, before I got the PG5. The dismantling, you can see the air strobel unit is pretty much the exact same thing, but it's actually not. It feels pretty damn different as far as like on foot, So the PG4, the air strobel unit is super soft. You have a lot of compression, and when you're walking around, it's just soft, right? But once you start like running or sprinting, down the court or whatever, it gets a little bit more bouncy. Obviously, definitely not as bouncy as Zoom, but it gets a little bit bouncy, right? And then also the foam compresses a good amount, so that also adds a little bit to the impact protection. The court feel isn't the best, but it's also not terrible. I would say it's around average, maybe a little bit worse than average, so that's okay too. Impact protection was really good as well. Super comfortable cushioning setup. Some people thought it was a little too soft, but just in my opinion, I thought it was great. So there's that. The PG5 though is a little bit different, right? So they're calling it the Air Dot Weld Strobel board or whatever, and it's pretty, like I said, it looks the same, but the PSI, I feel like the PSI is a little bit lower in the PG5 as compared to the PG4 because it just doesn't feel as soft. There's not as much compression either. It doesn't get as bouncy once you start like really sprinting and like really playing ball. So that kind of sucks, but I mean, like I mentioned before, there were some people that thought the PG4 was a little too soft and it was just a little too much. So if you thought that, but then you still thought it was like a pretty nice like a cushioning setup, that's pretty much what the PG5 is. It's just a mellower version of the PG4, and you get better court feel as well, so that's good. As far as the foam goes, you still have a good amount of heel compression, which feels nice. Impact protection, I would say, is a little bit worse than the PG4, but it's still nice in the PG5s. So it all depends on what you like. If you want a little bit more responsive cushioning, go with the PG5, even though you still get a little bit of compression. It's still kind of soft. It's just more mellow in the PG5. The PG4, you definitely feel that air strobel unit. And personally for me, I will have to go with the PG4 because I absolutely love it. I had no problem with it being like too soft or like me feeling slow in the cushioning setup or anything. So personally for me, PG4. All right, moving on to the materials. Okay, so the PG4, they're using a variety of materials, right? So we have like a textile material or like a very tightly woven mesh. And then here on the medial side, we have an open mesh material. And then underneath all of that, we have a one booty construction with like this neoprene material. It feels nice, it's easy to put on. It feels definitely a little bit thicker because of this extra layer of material than the PG5, but it's still like very soft, very comfortable, and pretty supportive. Also, the quality isn't bad. You know, I would say it's a lot better than the PG5. The PG5, this like textile mesh material feels really cheap, definitely very flimsy at first. You definitely have to break it in. It doesn't take a whole lot to break in, like a couple of days, not like one day, 2 days, you should be good to go. And it's very, very soft after that. And on foot, it feels not that bad. You know, it's thin, conforms to your foot, it's soft, it's not like stiff or anything. So I mean, on foot, I would say, I mean, personally for me, I like to have thinner materials, so I would say I like the PG5 material a little bit better because they both get soft, you know, and the PG4 is just a little bit thicker. So PG5 for me personally. If you want the better quality materials, obviously go with the PG4. And as far as the tongue goes, I would say the amount of padding in both of the tongues is around the same. And then for the ankle area, I would say the PG4 has a good amount more padding here in the back of the heel as opposed to the PG5. It's still a little bit of padding, but just not as much, right? There's the materials there. As far as the fit goes, the PG4 runs very, very short, so go up half a size. The PG5, you should be good, true to size. And once you do that, they both fit very, very well. I would say the PG4 is more snug here in the toe box and a little bit more like snug width-wise, right? PG5 is still snug width-wise, as far as the toe space goes, there is a little bit of toe space. It's not to the point where it's just uncomfortable for me, but it was definitely not as snug as I would like it to be. So if you want more of a roomier fit, go with the PG5. Or if you have a wide foot or you like to have a really roomy fit, I would suggest going up half a size with the PG5. For the PG4s, I would suggest going a full size up or maybe a size and a half. But I'm sure a lot of you guys just know that already, right? All right, as far as the support and lockdown goes, the PG5 is better. The PG4, I had no issues, right? Personally for me, there's really no lateral containment, I guess, besides just like fused material, but that doesn't really do anything. So, I mean, I didn't have any issues as far as like, it wasn't terrible, but I did feel my foot kind of like hitting this material and stretching it out. And when I was doing lateral movements, it wasn't to the point where it was just, I was feeling very, very slow, but I did feel it a little bit. And I'm a lighter dude. So if you're heavier, you're obviously gonna feel a lot of that. But for the PG5, they did a good job in like giving you lateral counters, right? So the foam comes up here in the forefoot as well as here in the heel. So for the PG5, lateral containment is going to be way better. As far as the lateral stability goes, they're both good. I had no issues with either of the shoes. They're both around the same width. I would say the PG4 is maybe just a tad bit wider, but I had no issues with lateral instability or anything. I felt good for these types of movements. I didn't feel like I was gonna roll my ankle or anything. All right, moving on to the weight, the PG5 is 100% going to be lighter, right? So 10.86 for the PG5, and then the PG4 is like 12. 11.89, right? So the PG5 is a full ounce lighter than the PG4, and you definitely feel it, right? So the PG4 is still really, really light. The average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, so this was like 11.8 ounces. So that's still very, very light, but the PG5 takes it to another level, right? So the materials are thinner because you don't have an extra shroud material over everything. And I don't know what it is. Maybe the foam is a little bit, they use a little bit less foam because, you know, you are lower to the ground in PG5. I don't know what it is. I don't know where like an entire ounce is coming from, but the PG5 definitely feels lighter and more minimal, and also a little bit more responsive here in the PG5. Like I mentioned, the traction is better, the cushion is more responsive, and the lateral containment and the support is better here in the PG5 as well. So, I mean, if you're a bigger dude and you need support, PG5 is better. All right, moving on to the aesthetics. Yeah, the PG4 is, I still think this is a terrible looking shoe. It looks like a water shoe or something. So I would have to say the PG5 looks better in my opinion. It's definitely growing on me. So tell us what you guys think looks better down in the comment section below. As far as ventilation goes, the PG5 is a little bit better. The material is thinner, even though, I mean, the PG4 doesn't really allow for airflow, and neither does the PG5, but the PG5 material is just thinner. So that wicks away moisture and it keeps your foot a little bit more cooler than the PG4. All right, so wrapping things up, I'm very, very surprised to say, but I feel like the PG5 is just a little bit better, right? So the PG4, I absolutely love the PG4. It's a phenomenal shoe, and I really enjoy playing it, especially because of the cushion, right? But there were some flaws like the traction and then like the support not being as good as it should be, especially for bigger players. So the PG5, they definitely fixed a lot of that up, but it's just the cushion is just not as comfortable for me personally. So that sucks, but that's also not a huge deal because the PG5 is still pretty nice. You know, you still have that air stroll unit. It's just not as soft and you just don't get as much compression, but I guess you do get better court feel, right? So that's a good thing. And I guess the materials, I mean, like I keep saying, it's a cheap, flimsy, crappy material, but it gets the job done on foot once you break it in and all that. So the PG5, I feel like, is just the overall better performer, and I feel like it will be better for most people. The only reason I would say to get the PG4 is if you want the softer cushion, right? Or I guess to save money, or I guess if you're a lighter guy like me and you don't need as much support, then the PG4 is still a great option. But pretty much in every category, or most of the categories, the PG5 is just better than the PG4. So there's that. I mean, for my first impressions, I didn't think this was going to be a thing. I thought the PG5 was going to be not that nice, but surprised to say the PG5 is really, really nice, and I would even say it's a little bit better than the PG4. So yeah, there is the versus video. And again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I'll leave a link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.